This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hello, welcome to Strong Sense of Place.
In each episode, we focus on one destination and discuss what makes it different than any other place on Earth.
Then we recommend 5 books we love that took us there on the page.
I'm Melissa Joulwan.
I'm David Humphreys.
We're going around the world, one great read at a time.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Strong Sense of Place. Today we get curious about Seattle. Welcome to the end of season 6.
We made it.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we started in France like 6 months ago?
Feels like it's been a while. It's been a minute. We worked our way all the way around the world and out into outer space. And we are now in the charming and delightful city of Seattle.
Good place to land.
Yeah. So it's our last episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a few minutes, we have some questions for you. We want to know your opinion. We've got a survey up at strongsenseofplace.com/survey, or you could just follow the link in your show notes. We want to hear your thoughts about the season and what we do next. Or you could just come by and say hello. Mel and I read every response we get, and we love hearing from you. Today in Two Truths and a Lie, we will talk about the man-made earthquakes of Seattle. And then we'll talk about 5 books we love.
I'm recommending a very unusual ghost story set in Seattle's 1990s grunge era.
I've got a trio of graphic novels that will transport you to the streets of Seattle. But first, Mel's going to bring us up to speed with the Seattle 101.
It's a 101. It's the endless run.
Okay, let's get oriented.
All right.
Visualize your U.S. map in your imagination. Seattle is in the Pacific Northwest, so looking at the map, it's in the upper left-hand corner.
I was surprised to find out that Seattle is north of all of Maine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Related fun fact, 50% of the population of Canada lives south of Seattle.
Stop. That's just confusing. Seattle is a beautiful mashup of water and mountains. So it's got the best of both worlds. If you want to go hiking, camping, boating, biking, or meander in a gorgeous garden, Seattle is a fantastic place to do all of that. It is basically a big outdoor playground. To the east is the fresh water of Lake Washington and the Cascade Mountains. The Cascade Range is known as America's land of fire and ice because that's where you'll find both the snowy peak of Mount Rainier, that is the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states, and Mount St. Helens, which is a volcano that blew my 12-year-old mind when it erupted in 1980.
Mount St. Helens, a Washington state volcano, has been dormant for over a century, but today it erupted with smoke and ash after a week of earthquakes which rattled the area.
I mean, do you remember that?
Yeah.
We were like, wait, a volcano erupted in the United States?
Yeah. And what a dramatic display of nature that was, too.
Very formative for me. To the west of Seattle are the briny waters of Puget Sound and dense forests in the Olympic Mountains. Some of the Douglas firs and the hemlock trees in that forest are 1,000 years old.
That sounds made up.
I just tell you what I learned, Dave.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise Washington's nickname is the Evergreen State. I was going to make a joke about it being a fine place to look for werewolves or witches.
Yeah.
And then I learned there have been more than 700 sightings of Bigfoot in Washington.
I'm going to give it to you straight about Bigfoot. Some kind of demented creature. always on the hunt for intruders, looking to kill, to devour, thirsty for blood.
That is the highest number of any state in the U.S.
That seems appropriate.
This elusive cryptid is very beloved in Washington. Back in 1970, the then governor wrote a proclamation to designate the Great Sasquatch as the state monster. The document was affixed with a lock of hair from the right front shoulder of Sasquatch.
I'm skeptical, but keep going.
In 2017,
Yep.
a state senator introduced a bill to name Sasquatch the official cryptid of Washington. The hunt is still going on. Today, a group of researchers called the Olympic Project collects evidence and works to demystify Bigfoot lore, including the theory that a Bigfoot nest site is located on the Olympic Peninsula.
A Bigfoot nest site?
Mm-hmm. There's a documentary about it. I will put it in show notes.
I'm waiting to see all the little baby Bigfoots.
They'd be so cute.
Would they be Littlefoots? Babyfoots?
Sasquatch sightings aside,
Yeah.
the Olympic Forest is also one of the wettest places in the contiguous United States. But despite what you might think and its damp reputation, Seattle is not as rainy as we suppose. It gets about 38 inches or 96.5 centimeters of rain per year. But other major cities around the world like Tokyo, Sydney, New York, Lyon, France, and Washington, D.C. all get more rain. For example, Tokyo gets about 20 inches more a year than Seattle.
Wow.
However, Seattle is misty. Paradoxically, the residents of Seattle buy more sunglasses per capita than any other U.S. city.
Really?
Yeah. The theory is that when the sun does come out, it glints on the wet streets.
Plus, everybody's shocked to see it. So they run home and they put on their sunglasses.
I like to think it's because the home of rock stars like Jimi Hendrix, Heart, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Foo Fighters requires everyone to look a little cooler than the average American.
That makes sense.
As the Fug Girls from GoFugYourself.com say, everyone looks sexier in sunglasses.
It's true.
We've heard a lot of superlatives so far.
Yep.
Seattle is also a city of firsts. It had the first floating bridge, the first police on bicycles, and it was the first city in the U.S. to play the Beatles on the radio in 1964. It also built the first revolving restaurant, so you have a place to take your parents on their anniversary.
Yep.
Or go after graduation.
In the Space Needle.
Yeah, it's called the Eye of the Needle. Elvis Presley ate there while he was filming the movie It Happened at the World's Fair.
That just makes sense.
Seattle was also the first city to elect a female mayor.
Oh, right on.
Her name was Bertha Knight Landis, and she was mayor from 1926 to 1928.
Wow, that's really early.
Yeah. She cracked down on police corruption and went after bootleggers and rule breakers at dance halls and cabarets. She also offered $1 to anybody who would narc on reckless drivers.
Good for you, Bertha.
So I was like, she doesn't sound super fun or anything. And when I looked at her photos, she looks like a very kind lady. She's got a kind face, but also like she would brook no nonsense from you.
Sounds right.
One final superlative about Seattle relevant to our interests. It's called the most literate city in the country. It has the highest percentage of citizens with a college degree, and 80% of the population has a library card. That's more than anywhere else in the United States.
That's amazing.
It's nice, right?
Yeah.
It's also one of only 2 UNESCO cities of literature in the U.S.
What's the other one?
Iowa City.
Huh.
So, for our 101 today, I thought I would share some ideas for a fantastic bookish day in Seattle.
Oh, awesome.
As usual, I've ignored the rules of time and space.
Sure.
I don't know if you can do all these things in one day, but it's nice to think about it.
Yeah.
Our day begins at the Seattle Central Library.
I've seen pictures of the Seattle Central Library, and it is a remarkable building indeed.
The Daily Beast called it the height of whimsy. It's 11 stories tall. It almost looks like a greenhouse. It's made of glass rectangles stacked on top of each other. So some of the spaces inside are just infused with light. In the basement, there's a hardwood floor etched with the first lines of 556 books. And throughout the building, bright colors are used to guide you. So there are green escalators, yellow elevators, and something called the Red Hall, which is just what it sounds like. It is bright red, and I'll put photos in show notes. It almost looks a little disorienting. The walls are almost glowing.
Huh.
All throughout the library, there are whimsical works of art. And it's home to 1.5 million books. Also a music room and a gift shop called the Friend Shop.
Can you buy friends there?
I mean, if books are your friends, sure. They have really cute literary adjacent stuff. The library offers a self-guided audio tour and free tours for groups of 5 to 20 people. So, new life goal just unlocked, I guess.
Yeah, let's do that.
After visiting the Central Library, you could head to the Elliott Bay Book Company. When I saw a photo of this bookstore, I literally gasped out loud. It's so pretty. It has hardwood floors and wooden beam ceilings with skylights, enormous windows, and shelf after shelf of books with those little staff pick cards attached.
Oh, nice.
One of the things I thought was really nice when I looked at their website is that it includes photos and bios of the booksellers. So you can see what their favorites are and get a sense of what kind of reader they are. And most of them have been selling books for a decade or more.
Wow.
They are definitely our kind of people.
Yeah.
Professional booksellers.
So that's nice. So you can sort of work up a relationship with a bookseller before you even cross the threshold there.
They look really nice in their photos. After you've picked out a perfect read, there's a cafe inside the bookstore called Little Oddfellows. And then across the street is Oddfellows, the big cafe. They serve brunch all day, Dave. I know that's your favorite.
I do like brunch.
They have croque monsieur and biscuits and eggs.
I like croque monsieur because it's fancier than saying grilled cheese sandwich.
It's true.
But you get basically the same thing.
They also have steak frite and something called a bread plate. And the first thing it lists on what comes on the bread plate is French butter.
Oh.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Alternately, you could chow down on a Seattle-style hot dog. A Seattle dog is a grilled hot dog served in a toasted bun, slathered with cream cheese, and topped with sautéed onions.
Oh, all right.
Sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah, I could go for that.
When we went to Norway and I had mayo on my hot dog, it was like a revelation because it had never occurred to me to put something fatty on top of a hot dog because they've already brought their own to the party. But cream cheese seems like it might serve a similar function.
Yeah, it would be like cheese, but the flavor would be really subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add those onions in there.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good.
Some people also add jalapenos or spicy mustard.
Let's do it.
Okay, now that we've been fortified by food and book shopping,
Yes.
it's time for comics, obviously.
Oh, comics. Yes.
At the Fantagraphics bookstore and gallery.
Yeah.
You know this, Dave.
I do know Fantagraphics. Yeah.
Fantagraphics is a Seattle-based comics publisher that's been in business for 40 years.
Yep.
Their retail shop sells everything that they have in print, plus some really cool merch, really cute t-shirts and tote bags, and indie comics from other publishers.
Yeah, if you want hip merch, you can do a lot worse than hang out with comics people in general and Fantagraphics in particular.
The shop also has 2 surprises. They share space with Georgetown Records, so you can also pick up some music on vinyl. And they have what's called the Damaged Room. Do you know about this?
I don't.
They actually describe it as their hallowed damaged room. And it sounds like heaven for comics nerds. That's where you can browse through damaged books and out-of-print comics. So you can find secret treasures in there.
Yeah.
Now that we're armed with more reading material,
Yep.
we have 2 choices. A Gothic library reading room or a posh haunted hotel.
Oh.
First, the Gothic.
Okay.
The Suzzallo Library Reading Room at the University of Washington is a massive hall with vaulted ceilings, arched leaded glass windows, brass chandeliers, and heavy wooden tables. It looks like the inside of a cathedral, and that is not by accident. The reading room is named for Henry Suzzallo. He was president of the university in the early 1900s. He said, universities should be cathedrals of learning.
Yeah.
The reading room is open to the public for silent reading every day.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so you can go in there with your own books as long as you keep your trap shut.
Which you should anyway.
Although it does look like a really nice place to sing.
And then you could be thrown out of the reading room, which is its own adventure.
We should make buttons. I got thrown out of a reading room. Alternately,
Yeah.
you could join a silent reading party, SRP, at the Hotel Sorrento. The SRP is held in the Fireside Room, which is a wood-paneled lounge with a huge fireplace. This SRP was started by the former editor of the Seattle indie newspaper The Stranger in 2009.
I know The Stranger. The Stranger was in part founded by our friend James Sturm, who also went on to found the Center for Cartoon Studies. James gets around.
He's a real indie guy.
He is very much an indie guy.
In the best way possible.
Yes.
The idea of the SRP is that people gather to read quietly together,
Yep.
enjoy a cocktail, and maybe a little conversation.
And I've seen video, and that is a beautiful room to do that too.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
And what sets this one apart is that it has a piano and there's live piano music during the reading time. You can also reserve the kind of chair you want to sit on.
Can you? That's nice.
And on the website, there are little descriptions of what you can expect if you sit in them. So if you sit at a bar stool or one of the little cafe tables, there might be some conversation. But there are also leather easy chairs situated by themselves if you don't want to talk at all.
Okay.
And there's a couch and some love seats close to the fire.
I like that there's a implied level of social activity depending on where you sit.
Introvert heaven. After the SRP,
Yeah.
you can actually rest your head on one of the beds in the Hotel Sorrento if you're not afraid of ghosts.
Oh.
Hotel visitors say that the hotel, built in 1909, is haunted by the ghost of Alice B. Toklas. In case you're not familiar, Toklas was the romantic life partner of the writer Gertrude Stein. They very famously lived together in the artsy scene of Paris in the early 20th century. The Hotel Sorrento was also a very literary and artistic place back then. Jazz artists performed there, poets and writers would gather. According to legend, where the hotel stands today was previously Toklas's childhood home, and now her ghostly form has returned to haunt the hotel. Some guests have heard her playing the piano on the 7th floor. Others see her walking in the garden in a full-length fur coat and a little hat. But, according to reports, her vibe isn't scary. A former hotel employee said, "There's a protective feeling, things are not sinister, Alice isn't mean or playing tricks."
I'm curious if Alice returning to her native home, even though it's changed forms, means that I'm going to return to a parking lot in Grand Rapids, Michigan at some point.
To hang out with your ghosty friends and smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
Analogously, I would be in a Burger King parking lot listening to the Scorpions eating French fries.
I hope we visit each other.
I'll bring the fries.
Yeah.
I want to end my 101 with a poem.
Oh, okay.
Since 2015, Seattle has named a civic poet every few years. The current civic poet is Shin Yu Pai. For her big project, she invited poets to write short poems about places in Seattle related to sustainability. 5 of the poems were posted around town, and you can download posters and postcards of them on the website, which I encourage everyone to do. They are a delight. Each one has a very strong sense of Seattle. They celebrate the area rivers, the public library, a traditionally Black neighborhood, Seattle's little Saigon, and bees. I want to read you the one called Urban Bees Blue Hour. It's by Joe Nasta.
Okay.
One thing to note, at the end, there's a mention of salmon berries. In case you're not familiar, salmon berries are native to the Pacific Northwest. They're shaped like raspberries, but they're the color of tangerines.
Oh.
And according to reports, they taste like rhubarb.
Thought they were going to taste like salmon.
They're kind of salmon colored, which is
Yeah.
where the name comes from. They're really popular in pies and jam.
Salmon berry pie sounds intriguing. Just the name.
It just gives me a visual of like a salmon head popping out of the top, which I don't think is what they're going for.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Okay, that is the completely wrong vibe for this poem.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Urban Bees Blue Hour. Our honey frames weigh heavy. The second summer dahlias bloomed under gossamer sun. And we vibrate softer now. We're ready for the coming chill, together on our scattered rooftops. We made more than enough to share, so lick the inside of the jar and buzz. We dare to hope. The bearded beekeeper will return, tend to our hive with his bare hands. The purple, sweet gum leaves will fall, but soon they will be green again. The day ended bold behind the Olympics. Remember us tomorrow when you swirl your coffee and smear your toast with salmonberry jam.
That's really nice.
That poem is Urban Bee's Blue Hour, and that's a wrap on the Bookish Seattle 101.
I'm about to say three statements. Two of them are true. One of them is not. Mel doesn't know which one is the lie. Here they are. 1. The Seattle Seahawks fans are so loud that their cheering has been registered as earthquake activity. Statement number 2. During the 1909 World's Fair, a woman was raffled off as a bride.
Oh my goodness.
And statement 3, in the late 1800s, Seattle was saved from financial ruin by a sex worker.
Okay.
Yeah. So in order. The Seattle Seahawks fans are so loud that their cheering has registered as earthquake activity.
I know that one's true from my football days.
That is true. So Seattle fans are known for coming early and being loud. There are 11 men per side on a football field, and the Seattle fans call themselves the 12th man.
Nice.
Yeah. This is so ingrained in the culture that the football team has permanently retired the number 12.
Oh, that's really cute.
Yeah. So no player can wear the number 12, but the fans can, and they do. There's also a flag with the number 12 that goes up before the game, and it's an honor to raise that flag. There's ceremony. Being a Seahawks fan is a thing. But the earthquake... So it's happened more than once. There was a famous event in January of 2011. Seattle was playing New Orleans in a wild card playoff game. It was a very exciting game, a lot of back and forth. And of course, it's do or die, right? You win or you go home. The season is over for you. It gets down to the last quarter. Seattle has the ball. They're protecting a 4-point lead, which is not a lot in football. They're 2-10 with less than 4 minutes left in the game. The clock is ticking. If New Orleans gets the ball, they could score and it would all be over. But Seattle gives the ball to Marshawn Lynch. Now, you could know nothing about football and see the tape of what Lynch did and still see that it is amazing. In about 15 seconds, Lynch gets the ball, breaks 9 tackles, and with one arm throws one of the other players to the ground. He covers 67 yards. Touchdown, Seattle.
He's dancing his way for the touchdown.
Breaking 9 tackles is madness.
That guy's like a bowling ball.
Yeah, it's true. So there are only, as I mentioned, 11 defenders on the field, and it felt like everybody in New Orleans had a shot at Lynch and some people twice.
Are you kidding me?
And that run is still considered one of the greatest in NFL history. The Seattle fans got loud. The noise was so great after his run that the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, the people who watch for earthquakes out there, registered a 2.0 quake.
Wow.
Yeah. In honor of Lynch, who's known for dropping into beast mode, they called that run Beast Quake.
So cute.
Yeah. So, was that the loudest crowd ever? It was not. It was not even the loudest crowd in Seattle. You want to guess who's responsible for the largest man-made earthquake in history? I'll give you a hint.
Taylor Swift.
It was Taylor Swift.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. 12 years later, Taylor Swift came to town. She was on the Eras tour. During Shake It Off, the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network measured a 2.3 quake, which is almost twice as much energy as the Beast Quake. And they did it 2 nights in a row.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did that one get a cute name too?
It's the Swiftquake.
Of course.
Yeah. Statement number 2. During the 1909 World's Fair, a woman was raffled off as a bride.
True.
So I put this in here to remind us of how much life has changed in the last 120 years or so. First, that's a lie. The 1909 Seattle World's Fair organizers did not raffle off a bride,
Thank goodness.
but they did raffle off a child.
Stop it.
Yeah,
No, they didn't.
a baby even. A 2-month-old boy named Ernest was put up as a prize in the raffle, according to the Seattle Times of 1909.
My face is frozen in horror right now.
Whoever won him did not come forward to claim him.
Was he up for adoption? Was this I don't understand the scheme here.
We know almost nothing about this kid other than the one line in the Seattle Times of 1909.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't know what happened to him after. An article in the Seattle Times in 2009, so 90 years later, mentioned that a lawyer was looking into it, but I couldn't find anything after that. It is incredible to me that first they would raffle a baby,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone was like, yeah, sounds good. And second, that Ernest lived in a time when somebody could have a life and seemingly leave no trace. And I hope it turned out okay for him. So the last statement we now know is true. In the late 1800s, Seattle was saved from financial ruin by a sex worker. So this story starts in the 1880s. Seattle had been a settlement for just a while, but it's booming. So in 1880, there are fewer than 4,000 residents. Small town, village even. 3 years later, the Transcontinental Railway pulled in. And then by 1890, there were over 40,000 residents.
That's a big jump.
Yes, 10 times the number in just 10 years. I'm going to guess that it felt like the train was just dropping off carloads of people every day.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not, librarians or writers coming to town. These are miners, fishermen, loggers, and with them, some problems. You can probably imagine what having 30,000 miners suddenly using your town as a bar might look like. So during the same period, there was a reformation. The good people of Seattle organize and get liquor licenses revoked and brothels closed and gambling is controlled, and they throw out the old corrupt politicians and they bring in the new guys. And the new guys get in and they're like, we made a lot of money by taxing liquor and prostitution and gambling, and now that's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a lot of things to build on account of all these people showing up. So what are we going to do about that? And that's when Lou Graham enters our story. Lou Graham is a German woman. She's relatively new to town. She's about 5'2", and at the time in her mid-20s. Fancy woman. She liked big hats with plumes, and she was described as having a regal bearing.
Nice.
Yeah. And she's got an idea. She wants to set up a brothel. But a brothel unlike anybody near there has ever seen. A nice brothel, a fancy brothel. The women are going to be beautiful and smart and talented. They'll be able to talk about politics or opera or economics, and the space is going to be nice. It's going to be like an upscale hotel, the best hotel of the era. And perhaps, most importantly, quiet. Right? It's going to be a quiet place.
Mm-hmm.
And she approaches a banker. Jacob Firth is his name. And she talked to him about that idea. And she convinces him to give her a loan, but she also convinces him to help her with the politics of the whole operation.
Sure.
And together they get buy-in, and she sets up her brothel. Lou Graham brings the Gilded Age to Seattle. She buys a lovely building close to downtown at the corner of 3rd and Washington. The building's still there. She puts a well-appointed bar downstairs and bedrooms upstairs. A lot of people show up. It becomes the place to be seen. One writer said that over the time it existed, more business got done at Lou's than at City Hall. Graham does quite well for herself. She takes her money, she buys real estate, she buys stock, and she's also a backdoor financier. There are stories about deals crossing Firth's desk, her friend, the banker, that he thought were too risky for the bank. The board's never going to approve this. And he'd send the business to Graham. And she'd charge a higher rate, but she'd ask fewer questions. And in just a few years, she is now one of the wealthiest people in Seattle.
Right on.
Yeah. I should mention that at least one writer believes that Graham was in a long-term same-sex relationship, and that further, the brothel might have been liberal in its policies, open to all. So our story skips a few years to 1893. There's a panic. If you've seen It's a Wonderful Life, you've seen the basics of a panic. Everyone's worried about their money. They run to the bank to get it out. The bank doesn't have enough cash to cover everyone, and the bank collapses. In 1893, over 500 U.S. banks collapsed because people were worried about their cash. This is devastating.
Right.
15,000 businesses and countless farms failed during this period. In some areas, unemployment was as high as 40%.
Oof.
It was an enormous financial disaster with global repercussions. It was just a bad time, probably the worst before the Great Depression. The banker, Jacob Firth, now facing the collapse of his own business, turns to Graham. Can you help me out? And she makes a sizable deposit in his bank, and she does so loudly. She tells everybody. And now everybody knows that Firth's Bank has the backing of Lou Graham. That bank would go on to be acquired by KeyBank almost 100 years later, in 1992. Graham would also make short-term loans to many local families, saving many of them from bankruptcy, and with her help, Seattle weathered the panic of 1893. Graham did not live very long. She died in 1905 at the age of 48 from syphilis.
Aw.
Yeah. By the time she died, Graham had become one of the largest landowners in the Pacific Northwest. She contributed more money to the education of the city's children than the rest of the city's citizens combined. She and Firth remained lifelong friends. When Graham died, her estate was handled by his bank, and most of her assets went to local schools. If you're curious about Graham, there's a well-reviewed novelization of her life. It's called Madame. It's by Libby Hawker. We'll point to it in the show notes. That's Two Truths and a Lie.
I know every operating
At my
system like
last
the
job,
back
in
of
my
my hand.
current role,
I have
25 years of experience and have worked with several people from your company. I've been recognized for my passion. My team is everything.
LinkedIn delivers candidates who rise above the rest. With an up-to-date view into shared connections, skills, and interests you won't find anywhere else. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
My first recommendation is I Wish I Was Like You by S.P. Miskowski. This is an unusual ghost story set in 1994 Seattle. Before corporations like Microsoft, Amazon, and Starbucks, before bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains broke big, Seattle was a small Northwest city. Artists could afford to live and work there without being stressed about how they would feed themselves and pay their rent. If you've seen the 1992 movie Singles, you have some idea of what I'm talking about. Lots of flannel shirts, Converse kicks, and listening to bands.
Yeah.
Seattle Weekly published an essay about living there in the 90s, and I want to read you a little bit because it really sets the scene for the backdrop of this book. How to be in Seattle in the last decade of the 20th century. Have puffy hair, wear very large clothes. Have a job that pays just enough for rent and beer. Go to shows. Go like it's your job. Go to the Off-Ramp and the Vogue and the OK Hotel and the Central and the Crocodile. Don't go to the Weathered Wall, ever. Go to so many shows that you get bored with it. Wish that you could write. Feel amazed by the girls around you who are making art and starting bands and opening bars. Start to write. Write about food and art and film and books. Feel a little embarrassed about it and exposed. You were good at being a rock chick. This is so nerdly. Keep going. Suspect that everything good in life might actually be nerdly.
It sounds a lot like Austin in that same period.
Mm-hmm.
Both towns had a kind of slacker culture and then suddenly came into lots of money.
Yeah. And then there was nowhere for the slacker artist to go.
Yeah.
So that's the Seattle in which our anti-heroine Greta lives, or more accurately, dies. When we meet Greta, she has just returned home on a Friday at the end of a crappy week working at a photocopying center. She's drenched because after waiting in the rain for a bus that never showed up, she stomped home 6 blocks and up 3 flights of stairs to find a dead body in her apartment. Her dead body.
Her own body.
Yes.
But now she's dead.
Yes.
And she's looking at it.
Yes.
That's curious.
She smokes 3 cigarettes, drinks a glass of Burgundy, has 4 tokes of weed, and tries to figure out what is going on.
It's good to know that she can still indulge herself.
Yeah. So you know the movie trope where you see a wacky scene and a voiceover says, "Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation."
That's where we are, huh?
That's this book.
Yeah.
We join Greta's ghost as she shows us her previous life and investigates how she ended up shot dead on the orange carpet in her living room. We see Greta as a student and how she accidentally falls into the desire to be a writer. She has a romance that goes tragically wrong. Her writing career sputters and fits and starts. She betrays a friend very badly.
Mm-hmm.
She's negligent with the feelings of a handful of people who genuinely care about her. And she nurtures her grudges like they're her pets. Our girl is very prickly and very messy.
Yeah.
But I was always rooting for her, while I was also rolling my eyes at her choices.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's kind of how I felt about music in the 90s too. I'm attracted to this sound and also, oh my God, you are so mopey and self-indulgent. Like, get over it. So that's all a compliment, by the way.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed hanging out with Greta, not in spite of, but because of her messiness. Greta's voice is darkly funny. She's self-deprecating and sarcastic. In the aftermath of finding her corpse, the thing that upsets her the most is that the newspapers think she killed herself. She says, "Of course I hated my life, but my fate to become a composite sketch of a 1994 20-something with a terrible job living in a grubby apartment in a city best known for suicide rain and serial killers, this was too much. I wasn't even a huge Nirvana fan. So the implication that I would copycat Cobain's suicide pissed me off more than anything." I should mention there's a lot of discussion of suicide in this book. I know that can be a difficult topic. This is your heads up so you can decide if this is something you want to read. The author, S.P. Miskowski, has recreated 90s Seattle's very vividly on the page, and Greta takes us into lots of Seattle landmarks. Her story is populated with people, characters with a capital C, trying to make a go with their art. They're creative and inspiring, but they also feel like they're about 2 seconds from couch surfing at a friend's house. This story is a detective novel and a compelling workplace drama. It's an inside look at the creative life and a meditation on what we make of our finite time on Earth. It's suspenseful and grimy, and I never knew what was going to happen next. I loved this weird, dark story. It's I Wish I Was Like You by S.P. Miskowski.
This is book 2.
My first book is This Boy's Life by Tobias Wolff. This is a nonfiction book about growing up, mainly in Seattle and Washington State in the 1950s. It's autobiographical. Wolff writes about his youth from when he was about 10 to 16 or so. A lot of the telling is episodic. We drop in, we see a scene, and then there's a paragraph break, and we're on to the next bit. This book has a lot going for it. It's written in very plain, understated language, the language of a bright 14-year-old, maybe. But it says so much, sort of both on the page and in my head. Here's an example. Here are 2 sentences from early in chapter 1. It was 1955, and we were driving from Florida to Utah to get away from a man my mother was afraid of and to get rich on uranium. We were going to change our luck. So immediately we know when and where we are. We know we're coming from an emotionally abusive situation. Mm-hmm. It doesn't sound like there's a dad in this picture. Mm-hmm. We know that mom is probably sharing too much information with her young boy, or he's emotionally sensitive to it, or both. We know the young boy is not old enough to have been involved in whatever his mother was experiencing. We know they're chasing a dream that they're not likely to find. We know that their luck is probably not going to change no matter how much they might want it to. That's a lot from 2 sentences.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. The density of that language never really gives up. So all the way through this book, it's simple text that throws a mean cross. Mm-hmm. It's got that going on. And along with that, the characterization is also really good. There are maybe a dozen key characters in this book, and they're all drawn well enough that I think one of them could walk into the room and I would recognize them immediately. This is a book that I think is rich enough that you could read it at different ages and get different things out of it. It kind of reminded me of Catcher in the Rye, but I think this is a better book. It's about the same kind of space, but this feels a little bit deeper and a little bit more readable at an older age than Catcher is for me. For instance, there are a couple of scenes where the author and his mother go to a fair and 2 guys pick them up, and these 2 guys manipulate them. For the boy, Jack, when he was young, Tobias called himself Jack, they ask him what his favorite food is, and he tells them it's a hamburger, and they tell them they're going to go back to their house and have a hamburger. In the end, Jack gets a bologna sandwich. Later, they promise him they're going to buy him a bicycle, and they coax out of him his favorite style and color, and we're going to go get that bicycle. And at the same time, they ply mom with booze and attention. Mm-hmm. So mom and Jack go back to their boarding house, and mom asks if Jack minds being alone that night. She's got a date with Gil, one of the men. He says he's fine, you should go. There's a lovely bit where he watches her get dressed with that sort of flavor of a young son watching his mom put on her going out face, and she goes. In the text of that scene, Jack is a little worried about his mother. But as an adult, I was worried about his mother. Yeah. Right? For me, this is all unfolding like a suspense novel. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you doing? Do not go out, Mom. Don't do it. And then when she comes home, she goes to see him, and she's crying softly. And that works into these 4 lines. What's wrong, Mom? She looked at me, tried to say something, shook her head. I sat beside her and put my arms around her. She was gasping as if someone had held her underwater. Because it's written from the perspective of her son, we never find out exactly why she's crying. Has she been assaulted or raped? Is she lonely? Is it because men can be horrible and these 2 sounded like really awful men? Is she depressed about her life? Is it just a big stew of all of that? But Jack works her up to a better humor, and they both go to bed. And the next morning, Jack's like, does this mean I'm not getting the bicycle? One of the great things about this book is my empathy for the author. Jack is a total delinquent over and over. This is the story of a young delinquent. He lies, steals, he uses people, he hangs out with the wrong crowd, he passes bad checks, he steals a car. But somehow I'm with him the whole way.
Sure.
Part of that is because of the writing. The author's emotions are so well conveyed that it's hard not to empathize with what he's going through. Another part of my empathy is triggered by the existence of the book itself. I know Wolfe becomes a successful author later. Mm-hmm. There is a redemptive arc that I'm not sure is in the story, but is in the existence of the book.
Right.
A third thing that really brought up my empathy is that this is a book about adults betraying children. And it happens over and over, from little bits like saying you're going to get a hamburger and swapping in a bologna sandwich, mm-hmm. to more significant things like Jack's mother putting her emotional state on Jack when he's way too young to be in that role. All of that was very resonant with me. I hope it's less so for you, but I suspect everybody's got a little of that. This book has been out for a while. It was published in 1989. It has since gone on to be a classic autobiography. Woolf himself has gone on to great praise. Among other things, he was awarded the National Medal of the Arts a few years ago. If you are curious about growing up in the 1950s in Washington State, or if you can relate to adults disappointing children, or if you just want to enjoy some fantastic writing, you might like this. It's This Boy's Life by Tobias Wolff.
Now, book 3.
My second recommendation is Deadline Man by John Talton. This is a murder mystery thriller set in the worlds of newspaper journalism and high finance in 2010 Seattle. Our hero and narrator is a man we know only as the columnist.
Really? The whole book?
Yeah. At one point, he's talking to someone. He narrates the book. And at one point, he's recounting a conversation he had with someone. And he says, he called me by my full name. But we never get his name. He is the economics columnist for the Seattle Free Press. His other nickname is Deadline Man, which he was dubbed by an editor who admired his poise under pressure. One of the other characters describes him so well, I'm just going to steal his little monologue.
All right.
You were born in Seattle in 1961. You look younger than you are. Your father died in federal prison. Your sister Jill killed herself 6 years ago. You graduated from the University of Washington and served in the military. You were part of a team that won a Pulitzer Prize 8 years ago. As a columnist for the Seattle Free Press, you make $108,000 a year and your taxes are in order. But your personal finances are a mess. Not something I'd want to advertise if I were a business writer. You were married once and divorced. Now you see Rachel Summers, Pamela Moffat, and Melinda Stewart at the same time. You get around, brother. You have no close friends.
Jeez.
Yeah, harsh, right?
Yeah.
But also all accurate. The columnist is egotistical and ambitious and emotionally stilted. He's also very good at his job. He's respected by other journalists and the corporate mucky-mucks that he interviews. What he writes can make or break a corporation. He's disdainful of the new bloggers that are popping up all over the place and mourning the slow death of real journalism. One of his defining characteristics is his ability to carefully compartmentalize his life. Until the day this story begins.
Oh.
Yeah. The book opens with the columnist having an epically bad day. He's in the middle of what should be an uneventful interview with a hedge fund manager. He's just there to ask standard background questions about a dull company called Olympic International. But then the conversation takes a strange turn. The financier cryptically asks what the columnist knows about 11/11. Our man knows nothing about it. But the vibe is so odd, it kind of niggles at him, like having a pebble in your shoe.
Yeah.
11/11. What is this?
Yeah.
He goes back to the office. There's an all-hands meeting, and he's informed that the paper is probably going to close in 60 days.
Yikes.
Later, he breaks up with one of his girlfriends in a very it's me, not you kind of way, which goes over like a lead balloon.
Yeah.
Then he gets caught in a downpour and is accosted by a young woman on the street who shouts at him, 11/11, a-hole, then warns him, you'll get yours.
Well, it seems like a motivator to figure out what 11/11 is.
Yeah, now that little niggle is becoming like a roiling feeling in his gut.
Yeah.
This is followed by a spate of mysterious deaths. The columnist is picked up on the street and interrogated by a mysterious federal agency. And that boring company, Olympic International, turns out to not be so boring. And all of that is somehow linked to the still nebulous 11/11. The columnist teams up with a young female reporter, he loves the ladies,
Yeah.
to get to the bottom of the mystery and maybe save the newspaper with one big splashy story. Like our hero, the author of this book, John Talton, is a veteran journalist. He's written about finance for more than 25 years and is currently a business and economics columnist for the Sunday Seattle Times.
So he knows what he's talking about.
He really does. Through his character, he gives us an insider's view of the day-to-day at a major newspaper and the impact that online journalism had on print newspapers. There are also some really nice, little bit heartbreaking poetic bits where he sits outside the offices and can see the giant printing presses pumping out the newspaper in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful description, and also it hurts a little.
Yeah.
If you have nostalgia for the pre-internet days of journalists who took their craft really seriously, this is going to hit you right in the gut. There's also a very strong sense of the city. The columnist's investigation takes him all over the Seattle area. There are vivid descriptions of different neighborhoods and the people who live in them, the mountains, the floating bridge over Lake Washington. John Talton has a real gift for putting words together. And the story surprised me a little bit because it weaves together spycraft and car chases and thugs in fine suits and shootouts and adult sexy times and neat bits about the craft of writing. And it all hangs together really well. It's like a collision of a Gabriel Allon espionage novel and the movie Spotlight.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, action, adventure, and entertainment hung on to a very intelligent scaffolding.
That sounds really good.
It's Deadline Man by John Talton.
This is book 4.
Okay, I'm going to cheat a bit. I'm going to talk about 3 graphic novels, but the first 2 are related and the third one will be very short. The first one starts in 2017. Susanna Ryan was an employee at the Seattle Public Library. She might still be, I'm not sure. She describes herself as a lifelong indoor enthusiast.
That's amazing. Now I want a shirt that says indoor enthusiast.
And all of that changed for her one day. One morning in 2017, she decided to go for a directionless walk. I'm just going out. She says she immediately started noticing things. She saw little bits that seemed like tiny stories to her. She noticed she could walk down the same street twice and have entirely different experiences. Streets she thought she knew well turned into opportunities for delightful new discoveries. She also felt like it was immediately rewarding, right? Go for a walk, open yourself up to new things, and see new things. Mm-hmm. She writes, there was an entire world hiding in plain sight in my own hometown. She said that walking was all she wanted to do after that, just walk Seattle. And she did a ton of it. She has since walked over 10,000 miles in Seattle. But walking is not her only love. She also likes drawing. And at some point on one of her walks, it occurred to her that she should put these 2 things together. She could walk and she could draw.
Love it.
Yep. And she could document her walks with little comics. So she did that. And they're called Seattle Walk Report. It started as a series of Instagram posts, and then it was collected into a book. The book is Seattle Walk Report, an illustrated walking tour through 23 Seattle neighborhoods. The comics are very cute. The images are black and white, pen and ink. They're one-page summaries of a walk for the most part, or notes about Seattle. So you might have a page with the headline, A Short Walk Down Walker Street, and then little illustrations of the things she found there. A squirrel, a paperclip, a kid practicing recorder, a husky, a very smooth rock.
That sounds really, really delightful.
It is, yeah. Or you might have something more involved, like the one-page comic Hidden Gems, where Ryan points out some of the things she enjoys about Seattle. The Republican Street stairs, a garden she likes, a lookout on 15th Avenue. And the randomness makes it really delightful. As you flip through, you'll find things like a timeline of Seattle's tallest buildings or a comic called Bridges Worth Walking. Every page turns a new way of looking at Seattle. There's one comic where she finds a Safeway grocery basket with a single clog inside. And then 7 blocks away, finds the matching clog.
Hashtag city life. Love it.
Unresolved Mysteries of Seattle.
Yeah.
Then for her second book, she got a little bit more deliberate. The second book is Secret Seattle, an illustrated guide to the city's offbeat and overlooked history. The book still has her lovely illustrations, but she's telling longer stories. It feels like we're still mostly outside. It's got that perspective. So we get a history of buildings and statues in Seattle. There's a chronology of the park at Green Lake, stories about the theater there and the water activities. She takes a deep dive into coal chutes and pedestrian-friendly bridges. She tells you where to go hunting for sea glass. My favorite couple pages are about small parks with great views. Of the two, I slightly prefer the first. I think it's because of the random vibe. It feels like you're just walking around the city and looking at stuff. But if you're headed to Seattle or if you're curious, they're both definitely worth your time. You will find things that you'll want to hunt down. While I'm going on about graphic novels that will inspire you to walk Seattle, I want to mention a recent release. It's called Street Trees of Seattle. It's by Taha Ebrahimi. Ebrahimi is a data visualizer. That's her day job. During the 2020 quarantine, she was home and she got interested in the trees of Seattle. And there are a lot of them. Seattle has 3 times the tree species diversity of most cities.
That's cool.
Yeah. She got a hold of a data set published in 2020 by the Seattle Department of Transportation's Urban Forestry Team. Who knew there was such a thing?
Mm-hmm.
That data includes 7 decades of information about more than 170,000 trees considered to be in the public right-of-way. And then she took all of that very crunchy-sounding data and made it approachable. She visited the trees and she drew them and she drew details about the trees. She made maps. She wrote their stories. She has a timeline of like when these trees come into bloom or when they bear fruit, and you can see the entire year in Seattle from the perspective of trees. The book will point you to the redwoods of Seattle, the monkey puzzle trees, the Chinese windmill palms, and the prankster of the tree world, the false cypress. Some trees even have their own stories here, like there's a giant sequoia in front of the Macy's downtown, or the huge beech trees in Volunteer Park. I'm not sure that Ebrahimi would classify her work as a graphic novel, but I would. The text and the graphics both support each other and they work to tell a story together. If you're curious about exploring Seattle, whether you're going to go there or not, these books are all great places to start. The first was Seattle Walk Report, an illustrated walking tour through 23 Seattle neighborhoods by Susanna Ryan. The same author wrote Secret Seattle, an illustrated guide to the city's offbeat and overlooked history. And then there's Street Trees of Seattle by Taha Ebrahimi.
I'm particularly interested in that last book that you mentioned. I love when visual thinkers and artists take data and turn it into something that anyone can understand.
Yeah.
When I was doing my research, one of the things I found is a garden/forest open to the public where you can go and forage for edible things in the forest.
Oh, whoa.
I just thought that was such a cool idea. I'll put the link to that in show notes. But it seems like that's kind of a fun go along with that last book you mentioned.
Yeah, 100%.
Book 5. My final recommendation is Bear by Julia Phillips. This one is a literary fairy tale about 2 sisters who live in the San Juan Islands off the coast of Seattle. It's a very loose retelling of the German fairy tale Snow White and Rose Red. In that story from the Brothers Grimm, the 2 little girls of the title live with their mother, a poor widow, in a cottage in the woods, and they befriend a bear. The bear is a cursed prince, and when the spell is broken, Snow White marries the bear turned back into a prince, and Rose Red marries his brother, and they all live happily ever after. In this story, one of the sisters, Sam, works at the concession stand on a ferry that shuttles among the islands of Puget Sound. Her sister, Elena, is a waitress at the country club. And their beautiful, formerly vibrant mother is slowly fading away in the back bedroom of their house in the woods, dying from an illness caused by solvents at the nail salon where she worked.
Yikes.
Yeah. It wasn't always like that. When the sisters were young, they loved living on San Juan Island. I want to read a little bit that sets up the fairy tale of Sam and Elena's childhood.
Okay.
Summers, the girls would go over to Lime Kiln and pass entire days posted up on the rocky bluffs watching for whales. Spotting them was like catching shooting stars. You couldn't focus on any one spot. You had to let your gaze go wide. Elena was especially good at it. She would jostle Sam's elbow and say, "Humpback." Humpbacks, gray whales, minks, porpoises rolling and leaping in the surf. Gorgeous orcas with their dorsal fins sharp as blades. The girls hiked along the coastal cliffs as otters floated below. They went north and played pretend among the thick, damp ferns. They chased each other down the park's trails. They hooted and squealed. Their world seemed enchanted, a paradise.
That's a really lovely piece of writing there.
Mm-hmm. Sadly, now, the sisters live in nearly permanent shadow. The book's first few chapters set up Sam and Elena's lives. The boredom and repetition of serving privileged people at their day jobs. The stress and heartbreak of caring for their ailing mother. The crushing weight of bills they can't pay, with no end in sight. Just relentless pressure, day after day. Sam survives by clinging to a promise Elena made her years ago. When the sad day of their mother's death arrives, they'll sell the house, move off the island, and find a way to, quote, slog less, live more, become the people they had never before had the freedom to be. This dream is very alive for Sam. And that's the first few chapters, right? You're just getting all of this backstory.
Right.
When we get to the fourth chapter, it's a single sentence filled with portent and possibility. They woke the next day to a bear at the door.
Wow.
Yeah, just like that, the story swings toward fable and fantasy while also remaining very firmly tethered to the real world. Sam is initially excited about the bear sighting. It's something different and borderline magical.
Yeah.
But soon, she's pretty frightened of this enormous creature. There's an earthy smell that lingers after it's been near their house. It's huge, like the sheer size is intimidating. It has big gnashing claws and teeth, and it's unknowable.
Yeah.
She is legitimately and understandably cautious.
That's kind of my relationship with bears as well.
Yeah.
You see a bear and you're like, that's amazing. And also, that thing could eat me.
I would like to remove myself from here as quickly as possible. Sam's sister, Elena, is enthralled. She walks the long way home specifically so she can go past the forest in hopes of seeing the bear. Eventually, she begins talking to him and feeding him leftover food.
Oh.
She believes the bear is a sign of their shifting fortunes, a little bit of magic that is going to change their luck. But wild animals being what they are, the bear is unpredictable.
Yeah.
The two sisters, devoted to each other, or seemingly devoted to each other before the bear showed up, start to see the tiny fissures in their relationship. Secrets are revealed. A variety of heartbreaks ensue. The sisters realize that even though they've been nearly inseparable, their expectations and their shared memories are not the same.
Mm.
The author, Julia Phillips, was a guest on Late Night with Seth Meyers. And in that conversation, she explains how she wrote this book during the pandemic lockdown and talks about her deep relationship with her older brother and how that guided this story. She is charming and vulnerable in a way you don't usually see on talk shows. And hearing her talk about this book made me love it even more. I'll put a link to that interview in the show notes. This story is pretty melancholy, but there are also glimmers of hope. And the emotional ride, I just found it immensely cathartic. It's a story about family and the secrets they keep that just really pushed my emotional buttons in the right way. And it explores how we keep secrets even from the people we love the most.
Yeah.
It examines class, the scenes of the way people treat Sam when she's working at the concession stand. They might make you a little angry. It looks at entitlement and the burdens borne by the working poor. These girls work constantly and are barely keeping their heads above water. And it's a love letter to the beauty and the brutality of nature. It's one of those books that made me go, phew, like a lot while I was reading it.
Yeah.
Which, as you probably know by now, is my highest form of praise. It's called Bear, and it's by Julia Phillips.
Those are 5 books we love set in Seattle. Visit our show notes at strongsenseofplace.com for links and details. We will show you the Beastquake.
I have a video that is so charming about an iconic Seattle hot dog stand where you can get the Seattle dog with the cream cheese on it.
Yeah.
Also, tons of awesome photos of the Seattle Central Library.
Yeah, and we'll walk you through Seattle and we'll show you some trees and some beautiful indoor places and nice places to go reading.
There'll probably be some 90s music.
Strong possibility. And that's it. That's season 6. We will be back with season 7, I would guess in the spring. In the meantime, you will be hearing from us on the Library of Lost Time. Don't forget to fill in our survey if you have a chance. It's at strongsenseofplace.com/survey. If you want to encourage us to keep going, please do that. That is at strongsenseofplace.com/support. You can join our Patreon, or you could just tell other people about how much you enjoy the work that we're doing. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
The Warning Woods has haunting horror stories that are sure to linger with you long after listening. I'm Miles Tritle, writer and narrator of The Warning Woods. Each week, I write an original scary story and share it with you on The Warning Woods. I've written 2 novels and nearly 200 short stories spanning the horror genre. If you're into scary stories, you need to check out The Warning Woods. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Warning Woods and click play at your own risk.